So thank you very much, Dr. Vijay Mahajan, for writing a great book, Digital Leapfrog, and also agreeing to talk to Digital Empowerment Foundation's Deaf Dialogue. And thank you also for taking note of the work of Digital Empowerment Foundation across the country and during the pandemic. We all have been enjoying those 5 pages and many more pages, of course. And thank you, Amir, for joining. Amir is on our board and economist. So we want this conversation to have between these 2 people, one from the digital perspective, another from the economic perspective. And Vijay, for the last 4 years that you have been writing this book, we would like to hear from you about everything that you have written in this book and what you went through. But before that, Amir, do you want to say a few words, because you know Vijay for a long time?
Yes, thanks, Osama. I have known of Vijay for more than 20 years now when he headed the Indian School of Business. But personally, I've known him very well for at least 10 years now. When he was writing his previous book, which really were seminal in explaining to people what the rural customer was about. There has been a very scanty literature on the rural customer from a marketing perspective. But Vijay's look at that has been really unique, from his 86% solution to rise of the rural customer to now the digital leapfrogs. So Professor Vijay Mahajan comes from a very strong understanding of rural markets across the world. And that is what fascinates us at the Digital Empowerment Foundation. In this book, Vijay, in this book that you've written, your focus has been on how the rural landscape has altered dramatically after the onset of the digital world. And you're arguing that the rural customer now is able to access the market much better.
So talking about this book, there are 3 things I would like to mention. First thing that I discovered was that the among these developing countries such as India and Kenya, they are navigating across centuries. On one hand, we are talking about the problems about the toilets, and then we're talking about how we're going to provide digital education to everybody. So we're navigating the issues of the 21st century, and then we're navigating the issues that many of the developed nations has solved in the 19th century or 20th century. Related to that is a very interesting statistics in the book. I actually tried to map all the developing countries on urbanization rate of the United States. So if you look at how the United States urbanized over time, right from when the Lincoln was the president of the country to the most recent, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, right now United States is about 81% urbanized. So India is where the United States used to be in 1880. Okay, and China is where the United States used to be in 1940. So it does not surprise me that we are still trying to solve the problems that people in the United States may have solved 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 years ago. So like the running water and sanitation, and maybe in some places the electricity, the toilet issues, some other issues, the accessibility to education, accessibility to infrastructure. So that's what really got me interesting. So first thing was that they are navigating across centuries. Second thing that I have to point out, which I have pointed out in the book also, that there are some amazing things which are going on in developing countries, and which is called the socioeconomic classification. So I don't know if you recall, a number of years ago, 𝐃𝐄𝐅𝐃𝐢𝐿 actually made the idea of the bottom of the pyramid very popular.
Yes.
And so if you will look at A, B, C, D, E, 5 classes, so his focus was on D and E, indicating that D and E classes should not be considered as a liability, but they should be considered as consumers, just like everybody else. However, interesting thing that has happened there is that these countries that used to be a pyramid shape has become a diamond. okay, diamond shape. And that diamond being the central part, which actually is a C class. So interesting thing which is going on in the countries there is the C class is expanding, both in Kenya as well as in India. And I have given the data in the book, which is very interesting. The reason that's interesting there is it's always a C class that pulls D and E class up. So for example, when I look at some of the middle class families here, they have somebody who comes to help them with cleaning, somebody who helps them to cooking. And so then they look at these people because C class always have aspirations. Okay, they want to give their children better than what they have. And those aspirations are the one which pull D and E up because they keep on looking at that. Oh, they have a television. I want a television. Their children are going to school. I want to send my school to a private school. Oh, they have a mobile phone and their children are taking lessons on a mobile phone. So they pull the class D and E up. What that means there is that the digital technologies are democratizing democratizing the markets. Meaning, one day, for example, I can use WhatsApp and I can call my driver. I call my driver in India, and I also use the same WhatsApp and I call the CEO of Unilever that I'm coming to India.
Yeah.
Okay. So you look at, for example, not only the WhatsApp, you look at, for example, the use of YouTube. YouTube, you have a lot of these people who have their channels on YouTube, but then also you see, for example, the person who was serving us in one of the hotels. He asked me, what are you doing? We said, I'm doing this. And then he said, my wife also has a channel on YouTube because she's a damn good cook. She doesn't speak any English. So her son says, Mom, why don't I just tape you and I'll put that on the YouTube and see what happens. For heaven's sake, people love what she was cooking. And then aspiration, for example, you look at the cosmetics, which is an aspirational product, and guess who has become the influencer? These are the people in small villages, small towns who've been taking care of their skin, taking care of their hair with all kind of the herbal, things they have been using since centuries. And they have their YouTube channels now, and they can't speak English, but they speak Hindi or whatever language that they have. So what I mean there is when you look at the digital technologies, be that be Facebook, be that be WhatsApp, be that be YouTube, other is that cricket. Cricket binds us together. And guess what? The Hotstar came along, and somebody in A class is also using Hotstar to watch the cricket, and somebody in D and E class is also using the Hotstar to watch cricket. That's how my chapter 1 started. Two soldiers actually who are going to Jammu and Kashmir. They were watching the cricket and getting excited and jumping up and down right at the New Delhi train station, which one of your friends actually, was kind enough to introduce us. So I think the exciting thing about there is that despite the fact that we have a lot of rural population, it has become very inclusive because the whole marketplace has become very democratic now. People have accessibility. My driver, for example, I couldn't believe that. This was a driver in Mumbai who probably typically would be from class D. So they are not poor, they are not rich, they are not middle class, but they're hoping to be middle class. And they always used to gossip with each other and talk about, who has brought who to meet who. And he's watching a movie on YouTube in Marathi. And some movie translated means Dangal. So I think that was exciting part when you look at across the board. Other very exciting part, Amir, there is that the revolution that I see both in Kenya as well as in India and therefore all the developing countries, is not limited to only one sector. So it's not limited to only education. It's not limited to e-commerce. People think it's like Amazon and Flipkart and whatnot. It's in many, many sectors. So if you will look at my book, I had given, I think 9, 10 or 11 different sectors that I looked at. And each sector, be that be agriculture, be that be the education, be public services. It was so exciting to see that how public services are being delivered to the non-urban areas by using these platforms. The WhatsApp or the banks, for example. The COVID, if you look at the vaccine, my God, it was amazing how a country of 1.3 billion people managed to get everybody registered on the app, be that be A class, be that be D or E class. And they made it available to everybody. And it's an open source, so do whatever you want to do. I think that's an exciting part, that this revolution is across the board in many, many different sectors. It has make the market very democratic, made it very inclusive. So rich, poor, the urban, non-urban, educated, non-educated. It has become very, very inclusive. That really excites me about this book.
Yeah, thanks, Vijay. One issue at the Digital Empowerment Foundation we always worry about is that while the technology is secular and democratic and does allow for goods and services to reach every nook and corner, it also serves as a major bottleneck for those who do not have access. And a large part of the country, and Osama will give those numbers, are people who still do not have access to basic smartphones. And that is something that we are worried about. But the point that you make, that the digital network, where it reaches, it just allows this D and E to actually come up to C. But one point on the consumer markets itself, Vijay, your insight will be very important here, is that has digital technology and its reach also altered the consumption cycle or the consumption basket? Or does it continue to be the same? Are people going to spend more? What are they going to spend more on with these new technologies?
Well, I think you asked me three questions, and all three are very important. First question you asked me there is, and that's why you applaud this foundation. God bless Osama and his entire team, because they're always thinking about that. They don't want anybody to be left behind. Okay, and that should be really the role of everybody, that nobody should be left behind. So if you look at my last chapter, I have given my wish list. And my wish list includes that the people like urban, non-urban, the gender diversity, people who will be left behind because of the language issues, people who may be left behind because of the what you call the how much they make, so and so forth. So I think it has to be inclusive, and nobody should be left behind. And therefore, I applaud the work of what Osama and you and your colleagues are doing. But also keep in mind, it's a good news, because you have also realized that we need to be inclusive, and you are there to bang on everybody. Hey, don't forget us. Don't forget us. Don't forget this small village in Jammu and Kashmir. Don't forget this small village in UP. Don't forget this small village in Orissa. Don't forget the group, which I think is very important. And but the fact of the matter is that it is happening sooner or later. The other thing which is making it happen, there is also rural migrants. Because when the rural migrants actually go to the cities and they see what's happening and what can be done, what is the potential, they are the ones who are actually bringing the changes, in my viewpoint, also in where they come from. For example, my driver comes from in Delhi. I've been with him for almost, you are the one who introduced us to the Gates Foundation. So it's the same company I use, through the Gates Foundation, Neptune. And he's been the same driver with me. And it's amazing to see, Amir, that how much he's able to bring to his village, because he wants to stay in touch with his family. He always wants to know what is going to happen to his harvest, so and so forth. So they are also pushing that, but let's not forget that it's not 100%. So we need to keep on knocking, and that's the reason, and bringing the prices further down. So that's my wish list, actually, the last chapter, which I think that you will like some of the things that I have mentioned. To me, the language was very important, gender was very important, the prices were very important, older people were very important. Let's not forget about that. Let's not leave them alone. Like, I see my sister here, who's 3 years older than me, and my God, she had found a new life. The moment her daughter gave her a phone, now she's in touch with all of us. She talks to everybody. She's talking to her nieces and nephews and grandchildren. So let's not forget that. It has to be inclusive. So inclusiveness is very key. So that was your first question. Second question that you asked me was that the baskets. No, I don't think the basket is going to change. What is going to do there is that information asymmetry is going to disappear. Okay, because you can Google and find the price of everything that you want. Okay, so for example, the how much does this cost, how much that cost, and as you know, some of the apps which has been developed for the farmers, these farmers can find the prices. How much is this worth, how much is that worth. The people are able to find the prices of the tickets. People are able to find what is available and what is not available. what is available in town and what is available in their area. So I think that asymmetry is missing. And I think the third question that you happened was, which I thought was an interesting question, are there any negative consequences of that? I think you did not ask me directly, but indirectly meaning that are we becoming too consumer oriented and we want more things since we have accessibility? Yeah. I don't think so. I don't think, because I think the C class, I bet on C class. C class major target there is that their children should be better than, they should have better than what they have. And their target always is education. Always education, because they know that the only way they can be better is not by more expensive clothes or, I mean, they're not going to do that, or buying expensive car, they're not going to do that. So I think they want their children to be better than them, which also is a signal to D and E that look at what C is able to do. And keep in mind, there is only one way to come to C, which is to come from D and E. So C class would increase. Oh no, I take it back. They can also come from B to C, but that happens only in recession, where some people in B lose their job and they become C, and recession, some people become in C also lose their jobs, so they become their D. But that does happen. Overall, it's always the D that migrates to C. So my bet is on the C class. I think they have aspirations. They want tomorrow to be better than yesterday. Today, and they want today to be better than yesterday. So that's my bet on.
I have a couple of curiosities. One is linked to what Amir said about the people who are digital laggards and who are excluded and all that. So I just want to make a point, Vijay, is that just to give you a number, digital leapfrogs are amazing, and every example that you gave is absolutely perfect and correct, and it is almost in each and every household that we come across. What we at DF always make a point is that if you are talking about people who are connected, which clearly is a sign that you haven't traveled to the places where people are not connected, because they are always more, I mean, even till now when we both are talking to each other, the percentage of unconnected community in India is much larger than the people who are connected. But that's not really the point. The point is that those who are not connected, their life is unfortunately dependent on connectivity, and that is resulting in exclusion because of the violation of rights, because of the overemphasizing requirement on the connectivity and digital. For example, biometric authentication. For example, not giving choice. If you are not if you don't have a bank account, then you don't have a choice of withdrawing the money or something like that. If you don't have a food to eat, then you can't have a ration without biometric being authenticated, and therefore the connectivity is not available. Therefore, you may not have access to ration, and so on and so forth. And if you go into the gig economy, which is the most connected economy, which is the most, hyperbole of the story of many unicorns, there the people who are connected, who come from the DE class or the aspirational C class, has becoming more like a data point of being consumeristically being used rather than benefiting them, whether it's Swiggy or Zomato or Ola or Uber and so on and so forth. So there are examples of having online channels started by the poorest of the poor and the E class or a D class, and they are making money out of it. There are several those examples, but the examples of having several million being driver in a gig economy or a delivery boy or a person in gig economy is much larger digital inclusion story, which actually resulting in more exploitative result and more, digital exclusion things. And, I wanted your point of view is that when you write a book like Digital Leapfrogs and each and every word is correct, what are the digital laggards?
What are the digital what?
laggards,
Like
in
who are
what?
no, I think whatever you said, I cannot disagree with you some anything you said.
Right.
I think I 100% agree with you. We cannot leave anybody behind. Absolutely not. No country can grow digitally or otherwise by leaving people behind. So everything, the possible things needs to be done to make sure that it's an inclusive story. So that I 100% agree with you. The rest of the legal things, I am not an expert on that, being a marketing professor, but I'm totally aware of the fact that there are certain people, despite our best intentions, are left behind, and that's not acceptable. So there, I totally agree with you. However, also keep in mind that in developing countries, there's a lot of market development needs to be done. So, for example, the many of these companies, they go to these villages to tell people that it's a good idea to actually brush your teeth. It's a good idea to actually get your eyes checked. This is the market development work, which is the typical story of the developing countries. Our people they buy a brush, but they don't buy toothpaste because there's a limited budget. So they put a salt on that. So I mean, I'm totally aware of that. But I think that the market development work is actually onerous is on the part of these companies. For example, I was very impressed when I saw that the Google Sathi program, which goes to all these small villages and is teaching people first the value of YouTube, is also teaching people to be actually how to use the technology, so on and so forth. So the market development work needs to be done. And that's where I think the partnership between, for example, something like your foundation and the corporate sector will be key, because you'll be able to do that corporate sector despite the best intentions, because they simply are not as informed or as efficient as some organization like that. So your organization need to play a major role in the market development. Make sure that not only accessibility is there, but also you teach them what the benefits are. Let me give you an example. You mentioned about the Uber drivers and all that. The best example, the many, actually, I shouldn't say that, actually that I learned from Kenya. The Kenya, actually, if you will look at that, and I always compare with respect to Austin or Texas, where I live. It's interesting to see that no state, including Maharashtra, has an economy bigger than Houston, Texas. Okay, so let's just admit that no state has an economy bigger than, and Houston is just one city in the United States, and it's only one city in the state of Texas. Okay, there are only 4 or 5 states in India who have economy bigger than Austin, Texas. And I don't even come from a major city in the United States. We have 2.5 million people, our economy is 146 billion. Now, let's look at Kenya. Kenya, actually, it's an amazing country. People are so hardworking. Every time I go, I find them very calm, cool, very blessed. I mean, of course, they have some issues. Their economy is much smaller than Austin, Texas. The whole country. Their population is 7 times bigger than Austin, Texas. 20 times bigger than Austin, Texas. So imagine for a moment about Uber. This is what I mean by all inclusive. Okay, so that how do you bring in the people who just could not be part of the inclusive strategy? So Uber has an interesting issue. 71% of the population are rural areas. So guess who's going to drive a car? Only the rural areas. Guess who does not have a car? Rural areas. Okay, so here you are finding somebody who will become an Uber driver and he doesn't have a car. So because nobody like the US, students and the middle class families, they're going to become an Uber driver and make some extra money. So I walked into their office and it was very interesting to me. I see the first counter where they're actually talking to the people who wanted to be Uber driver. They have to have the motivation, the other attributes like how to be courteous with people, customer orientation. Second part that I see there is the technology. So all of a sudden, this guy who has come from they call it up country. So these guys is being taught about the technology and so on and so forth. And third section about the banking. He said, we are not going to give you cash. So you better open an account. And by the way, don't show up here without your spouse. So we want to teach both of you how to use a bank account. And I'm looking at that. I said, oh my God. And then I said that, but why would they become an Uber driver when they don't have a car? He said, well, there's somebody who's going to give them a car and they will rent that, lease that every day. And this Uber drivers revolted. He says, we drive somebody else's car. We are not making any money. The bank says we can't give you a loan. because you don't have a credit history. So guess what? This bank became very innovative. He said, you know what? Let's look at the credit ratings. If the credit ratings is very high, that means that this person really cares about the job and he really cares about his customer. And they say, we're going to take a bet on it. We are going to give a loan to somebody who on a 5-point scale has a very high Uber, the Uber ratings, and give them a loan. And at the end of the day, I asked them what happened. Was the default rate any different? He says, no, default rate was not any different. So this this guy from rural area who's not even that sophisticated, and by the way, some of them were disabled. So they could actually also get the car. And they became the best Uber drivers. They become entrepreneurs. So in the process of creating Uber drivers, which is not to defend the Uber, they became entrepreneurs.
So, Dr. Vijay, one thing I wanted to find out while you were researching and doing this book and writing this book, what are the major developments or underdevelopment that you came to know, which would have been done had contributed the market much better, the consumer market much better for digital? For example, let me tell you that, okay, there is this Uber thing, and then there is this Swiggy thing, then there is this whole, online market, buying online, and Amazon is a big story in India. OLX is a big example in India. Even the rural people are selling their second-hand products and so on and so forth. But at the same time, I see that 320 million children of the government schools in COVID time, when they had to go home, they were all disconnected from education, because they didn't have, digital infrastructure to get online. That's a huge number. 320 million is almost like population of United States of America. And they are all adolescents, they are all children, they are all growing, and they were unconnected.
I think among all the issues that you mentioned, the number one issue that will be key to class C, D, and E is education. Okay, my driver is a case in point. Poor guy, he says that he was doing very well COVID time. He could not drive his car anymore. So he had to pull out his 2 children. He was very proud last time when I came that he has sent in his definition, the private schools. I mean, these are not the private schools that, the class A and B would send to. And no, he says, I'm sending them to the government schools. And I said, why? He said, because my children don't have the technology. He says, I wish I could buy them this phone. So I think the key is really going to be that how do we actually, I'm so proud of the 𝐷𝐢 story. I had an interview with him also. This is a guy whose English is as good as bad as mine. So we're comparing our accent. We both come from government schools. My education was all in the government schools. I started learning English when I was in the 6th grade. So we're comparing those stories. And I said, this is the guy who used to give coaching classes in the stadiums. Okay, so that's where he comes from. And no, you look at that, the technology that he's coming up. So I think, why don't we have more stories like 𝐷𝐢, which focus on the children of Lalit, my driver, whose children wants to get education. They are very super, super smart. They have proved it before COVID that they can do very well. But unfortunately, when the COVID comes, he says, I could not make that much money. In fact, I'm in debt. No, he's coming out of the debt. He's very hardworking. And so I think that this is exactly my last chapter mentioned.
So one last point that I wanted to ask you is that what is the difference that you see between the United States of America, the way they are integrating digital in their lives, and the way we are doing in India?
I don't think there is any difference, to be very honest with you. They're also I look at the school level, they're also giving them laptops. They're also telling them that it will be paperless. We are not going to accept any assignments on the hard copies. Every assignment will be accepted on the laptop. Children are children. Education is education. Okay, what you need are not only hardware, you also need very good teachers. And I think good thing that I like about 𝐷𝐢 is he has proved that in a country like India, if you don't have too many teachers, how do we leverage that technology to take the message of some of the good teachers and spread it to amplify that and give it to all the students? So that's why he picked up the best teachers in each area. They say, hey, we like the way that you do. Would you mind if we tape you and you make some money and we'll amplify it to all the children? So I think the amplification of what some of the good we cannot create, the millions of teachers to go everywhere, but at least we can amplify the message of some of the top teachers, the millions of the students. And which is not to say that those teachers are doing it bad. He says we can complement what those teachers are doing. So they are doing the same thing we're doing. They are also focusing, for example, on telemedicine. But we have our own issues. Our own issues there are that they say without the seeing the doctor at least one time, you cannot do that on the video. So we have other legal issues that we are dealing with those. The how to make the telemedicine available to everybody. During the COVID, the insurance company said that will pay you. Even if you're, like my doctor says, you can make an appointment, telemedicine, but no, after the COVID was over, question no, is the insurance going to pay them or not? Because if the insurance company says if the patient is not coming physically in your office, we're not going to cover you. So they say, wait a minute. So why should I use the technology? So I think they have their own issue, but those issues of, at the end of the day, those issues are very much like us, except the implementation side, execution side is very different. But, the one thing that I have learned, Osama, during this time there is that the technology is helping us to amplify the limited resources that we have and make it available to everybody. Like the teachers that I mentioned. Other thing that technology has taught us there is that it has become so secular. A, B, C, D doesn't make a difference. The A is also watching Kapil Sharma show, and D is also watching Kapil Sharma show. It's really amazing.
Does that mean that what you earlier said, that India was about 1.5 century behind USA, has been shortened by a few 1 century or half a century or something?
No. It just, this was make us aware that digital technology is not the only solution for this country. Let me give you an example. Before you go. I enjoy, every time I come to Delhi, I enjoy going to the different the places of worship. I don't know, I just want to see what's going on. So I go to Bangla Sahib to see I'm so amazed at how many, irrespective of the class, people volunteers. So there's no class system there. A, B, C, D, E, there's nothing. Everybody's, picking up the shoes, cleaning the place. And then I also go to Nizamuddin. Nizamuddin, I know the history. I love what this man used to teach. I wish I could stay somewhere close by. And I went there actually the second day that I came. I asked my driver to take me to Nizamuddin. And I went there and nothing had changed. I went inside, the same thing he did. He says, prayer, please bless him, please. Elderly people should be very fine. His children should really progress and all that. And then he gave me the physical bond, which I'm wearing on my hand. So this was a physical step to remind me that I've gotten the blessings. That's not a story. Okay, so the story is not finished. So listen to me. And, I was very happy. I said, I'm glad that these people are preserving our heritage for 700 years. And I came up, then he says that, which I had expected, he brought a ledger. He says, sir, we have 7 categories. We need some money for the Ramadan time. We have to iftar, we this and that and that. So I feel, all the categories, put some money in all the categories. Then he says, would you give us your address? So that I kind of got a little shaky. I don't want to give my address. I just wrote Vijay Mahajan, Austin, Texas. Then he says, sir, at least give us your phone number so we can stay in touch with you. So I gave my US phone number. As soon as I came out of the gate with my driver, then my phone, tuck, 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 tuck. And guess what? I had digital blessings. So he had given me a digital bond. And the digital bond was 3 beautiful pictures from the dargah, where I had gotten this daga as a blessing, the physical blessing. And no, I have a digital memory. And my God, I jumped. I said, my God, this 700 years old shrine has come to the 21st century. I felt so proud, but only for 30 seconds. So moment I came out, I was surrounded by the ladies and the children who were asking me for the money. No, I said, oh my God, this has not changed. So this is what I mean, that the technology, he gave me digital blessings, which made me feel so happy. And I'll carry it wherever I carry my phone. And I know that it'll give me blessing, but what do I do about the children? And I could not handle it. I gave the purse to my driver. I said, please do whatever you need to do. I'm moving out. The moment they all saw that the purse was with the driver, not me, they left me alone. So then they start chasing the driver. So, this is what I mean, that we have to realize that digital is not going to solve.
Wonderful. Yeah,
Thank
absolutely.
you. Thank you so much. Yeah. No, thank you so much. And I think if we have the book, we should show to the screen the book, and so that, so that we have this, recorded. Very brave of you to have this, and thank you very much.